Hello everyone. This is Jayati from Saki Waters, the South Asia Consortium for Interdisciplinary Water Resources Study. On behalf of Women for Water Partnership and Saki Waters and all the organizing partners, I would like to welcome all of you to our virtual site event as part of this UN 2023 Water Conference. To our session on climate change, wetlands, and women, actions towards creating resilient communities and ecosystems. So, first of all, I would like to thank all of you so much for joining us today. We look forward to an enriching session together. First of all, I would like to invite Ms. Kusum Attukarola, who is the regional chair, Global Water Partnership, South Asia. She is also a member of the steering committee, Women for Water Partnership, and chair NetW Water Sri Lanka. So when we started, Kusum and I were both wondering as to why, after so many decades of water and gender advocacy, once again in 2023, we have to plan a session for the world to see that indigenous women, if provided with leadership roles, can be the real change makers. Why women should be actively engaged in policy and decision-making processes, and why they remain at the receiving end despite studies proving their efficiency. So over to you, Kusum. Please lead us to this brainstorming session so that we all together can find answer to these questions. So welcome, Kusum. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Ayubowan. Vanakkam. Assalamualaikum. I'm so happy to see so many of you joining in this session. And I'm going to start off by saying, Jayati, I'm disappointed. You didn't mention that I was one of the gang which started out Saki Waters in year 2002, the core group. And at the time that we started, one of the most significant activities that we had done is gender and IWRM, gender and water in South Asia. And this is an activity which I'm very happy to see. Jayati, you have been continuing, you and Saki Waters has been continuing. So again comes to the question, why is it that we have had Beijing 1985? We have had Dublin, Rio. Sorry. 1985 in Beijing, 1992, Dublin, Rio, all of this which gave us this most important Dublin, Rio principles that women have a significant role in the management of water. But here we are back again talking the same thing. So is it yesterday once more? I think that what I see is that because of the bifurcation of the sectors, the women's empowerment going on one line and water in another, sometimes we find it difficult to bring it together. But this activity that we are having here, climate change, wetlands, and women, is definitely something which brings all the key factors, all the keywords together. But being in South Asia, we also have to understand to see that our activity has to be seen in the context. South Asia very often and still is in many parts a very conservative society. So when we talk about women's empowerment, people have always, come back and said, you are talking women's liberation. We are not talking women's liberation. We are talking of optimizing women as the human resource which can turn the tide for climate change adaptation. So with that, I would like to go to our first speaker, who is on the way to the UN Water Summit somewhere, Ms. Marit Verhoef-Cohen, who is the chair of the Women for Water Partnership. While you are setting it up, Jayati, I'd like to say that if I look at this activity and how all these people have come together and why women's organizations survive and thrive, it is because of networking, of good networking. And Women for Water Partnership is such a network which has brought us together. And many of us have, in one way or the other, we have come together on on a platforms, on public platforms, on global platforms because of Women for Water. So Jayati, can we go ahead with the recording because Marit is not available right now?
Yes, we are doing that. Judith, could you please start the video? We have a video message from Mariam. Here it is.
Honorable guests and speakers, welcome to the virtual side event of Women for Water Partnership and Saki Waters. I am delighted that this session came about as it is such an important subject for women in rural areas. Women play a pivotal role in getting water to their homes and managing and conserving water resources. I assume that most of you know that women are the most impacted by climate change events in the wetlands and almost everywhere, and that change in the wetland ecology will increase the time and efforts put by women to access and manage safe water, particularly in vulnerable communities. That is why women need a voice at the decision-making table and have to be part of developing water policies. The highly esteemed speakers during these presentations will make you realize the need of implementing women's voices in the water sector. Wish you a wonderful session.
Ik kom bij je.
First speaker is Mr. Manish Rajnikar. He is representing the Feed and Saki Waters, and he would be talking about how indigenous women, given an opportunity, can make the difference. So I would like to invite Mr. Manish. Mr.
Van
Manish,
Saki Waters. Maar
Judith, could you please keep muting everyone if there
I
speakers
think
are
we
on?
can knock off that video altogether.
zo gaat het.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yes. Yeah, Marit is also here. We played her video, but she is also here. Yes, so welcome to Mr. Manish. Could you please introduce yourself and start your presentation? Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Manish Rajankar from Maharashtra in India. I work with an organization which is Foundation for Economic and Ecological Development, and working in association with Saki Waters also. So here shall we start now?
Yes, please.
As I said, I'm from Maharashtra and working in the Bhandara, Gundia, Chandrapur, Gadchiroli district, which are at the easternmost part of Maharashtra and is in the central Indian region. The Bhandara and Gundia districts are known as the lake districts of Maharashtra. And when we look at the uses of wetlands at village level, people use these wetlands for 17 to 18 types of uses, and among them water for cattle and irrigation are the only consumptive uses, and all other 16 to 18 uses are the non-consumptive uses of water. And mostly women are engaged in these non-consumptive uses, like they collect vegetables, tubers for consumption and sale, or grasses for making brooms to clean their houses, or for washing clothes, etc. And that's why women are also very keen to manage these wetlands and the biodiversity which is associated with it. Another major stakeholder of these wetlands are the fisher folks. Dhivar is a traditional fishing community of this area, and Gond is the tribal community who are also engaged in fishing. But before about 70 years, the exotic fish species have been introduced to these wetlands to improve the fish production, like grass carp and common carp. These herbivorous fishes have destroyed the aquatic vegetation, and dragnet is used for fishing of these fishes in smaller wetlands, which also destroyed the flora of the wetlands. It affected the habitat and availability of natural food of fishes, which resulted in low productivity of the fishes from these tanks. And so these communities were also facing problems about these kind of management of the wetlands in the area. So there were some knowledgeable individuals from community elders like Patiram Tumsere, and who were thinking that the things which are happening in wetlands are not going to sustain our livelihood. So we have to rethink it and restore the habitat and especially conserve the indigenous fish species to increase the diversity in these wetlands. And some young women leaders from community like Shalu, Sarita, Kavita, they also came forward and organized the women at village level to lead the work for ensuring livelihood support from wetlands for women. So we have developed with the help of these women leaders and experiential knowledge of the fishing community, we developed the method of aquatic habitat restoration. For that, we plow the wetland area in summer when water is at the minimum level, and then uh, when the rain comes and water gets up to 1 to 2 feet, we throw the seeds of aquatic grasses on periphery and also plant the saplings of some selected plants which are brought from the nearby wetlands. Some rules also been followed by community after this activity, that they will not release the exotic fish species in tank, and also prevent the cattle to enter in water for next 3 to 4 months to protect the planted saplings. We have done this aquatic habitat restoration activity in many tanks, and have deliberately kept the data of 12 wetlands, and it showed that the fish production has improved from 2 to 10 times after the restoration, and uh, especially of the indigenous species. Earlier, there were only 8 to 10 species were found in these tanks, but now they have increased to 30 to 40 species. And indigenous fishes gives 4 times more economic returns to the community in comparison with these exotic species. It is the community's net profit, as they have not to release the seed of these indigenous fishes. Another problem was the this exotic and invasive plant called Ipomia fistulosa, which is locally called Besham, means shameless. And people say that it is very hard to eradicate this plant from tank, but it covers almost all the available area of wetland, uh, which where native plants have been found. And the women groups, self-help groups of the village and the fish members of the fishing cooperative society have decided to eradicate it. And we have experimented in 5 wetlands, marked the plots by GPS. And when all the villagers have removed the in the photographs at the uh, bottom of the screen, uh, there is one which is having hypomia, another is after clearing the hypomia, and the third one is the 1 year after the hypomia extraction activity, and which shows that almost every part has been covered by the local plant species. We have also collected data from these 5 wetlands, which shows that it can be eradicated through human labor, and we are using this data and our experiences to advocate with the state government to include this work in the MGNREGA, so that all the community can get benefit by removing this hypomia from the wetlands. The another work that we have started with women to sustain the support they are getting from the wetlands is the fingerling production. Uh, they themselves have constructed these bamboo cages and from green nets and bamboos at local level, and they release the spawn of the uh, Indian major carp species in these bamboo cages for 20 days, feed them, and after 20 days, it has been released in the pen which is constructed in the wetland for the next 50 to 60 days. From this, they have assured to get the high quality of the fish species to improve the fish production along with the habitat restoration activity. To complement this effort, one self-help group of women have also started the seed bank of aquatic plants. They collect the seeds of white rice and grasses in uh, the season, and then cleans it and store it to disseminate it to other people
हाँ कितने में
other
भाई नहीं जा
for propagation. So all these efforts have been earlier fishing cooperative society. It is totally dominated by men, but the activities which are going on since last 7 8 years, and women have showed that how they can help to restore the wetlands and restore the fish production capacity of these wetlands, and also help in improving the productivity of fish production. The fishing cooperatives have started involving them as shareholders in the area. Women have established the micro enterprises of fingerling development. They also are preparing fish pickle from indigenous fish species, and uh, chips from lotus rhizomes, etc. Uh, at the same time, we are also using the Forest Right Act to establish the community rights over these wetlands, and 12 villages have uh, included these rights over wetlands in their CFR claims, and 5 Gram Sabhas have approved it and submitted to SDU level committee for establishing the rights. Habitat restoration has been also carried out in 45 wetlands in 5 districts, and seed bank of aquatic plants is also established. And at the end of the day, uh, what is more important is the satisfaction and smile on the faces of these women who are dependent on the wetland. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Manishi, for sharing this success story that how after acquiring leasing rights, the women self-help groups and cooperatives took the lead in wetland restoration and fisheries management and transformed it into a profitable venture. So thank you so much. And Kusum, can we go to the next presentation now? Kusum, you are on mute.
Thank you. But I would also like to pick out two words. One is, I think we see them, they are accepted and they are getting some kind of decision making at the organizations which more or less run this, the what do you call it, the divisions. But there's also another word that which came up earlier, the chestnuts and the lotuses. When we look at water projects, very often we do not look at the small scale livelihoods of people, but it is very important for the marginalized groups. It may not, come very high as percentages, but they, for a poor woman especially, this is very important. So let's go on. Thank you, Manish, for bringing these ground level insights. And we will go on to another person who will give us more ground level insights. Dhruva Dasgupta from the Society of Creative Opportunities and Participatory Ecosystems, SCOPE. Here is Dhruva's film.
So she's making a presentation on title From Crisis to Opportunity, Women and Climate Change in East Kolkata Wetlands. Dhruva, over to you.
Thank you very much. I have unmuted, and I'd first like to ask, am I audible to the audience?
Yes, you are. To me, at least.
Thank you. Thank you. Very hearty good afternoon and a welcome to all of you who have taken your time out to listen to all of us, and to the Society for Creative Opportunities and Participatory Ecosystems. I have special thanks for Women for Water Partnership and Netwater and Saki Waters for working very hard to materialize this side event. And it has been great working with all of you to present our case before all of you. What I will say is, covering 125 square kilometers of area, I would be dealing with a very fledgling initiative, but this has a long way to go, because there is some amount of government support. And one of the key things that I would say at the end is about what we think about what government support can do or has the potential to do. But right now, I would please request that the PPT presentation, which is, I think, there with Judith, with could it please come on screen? Is it possible to do that? Share it?
Yes, just give me a minute. I'll do it.
Yes. I would also say that my my words have two components. One is the speaking part and the PPT, and the other is a small little film which comes after the PPT is presented.
Are you able to see?
Yes, you can see it.
Yeah. Is it possible to make that full screen?
Judith, you can go to the slideshow mode.
Yes. Okay. So we are basically talking about women trying to build resilience in the face of climate change. If we could please have the next slide. Yes, so the East Kolkata wetlands, as we all know from all over the world, is the largest contiguous set of wastewater-fed wetlands, peri-urban wetlands, which accept wastewater from the city, domestic sewage from the city, and use it for food production. So what we have is a stable urban fringe. We have a cluster of 32 plus villages where about 130,000 people are inhabitants, and they do three major kinds of production and a few allied kinds of production. So this is basically the location, and this is the city of Kolkata, and the East Kolkata wetlands is just next to it. Could I have the next slide, please? So this is a Ramsar site, which is a tutorial ecosystem. And the important part is here, the worldview of the people, and this relies a great deal on experiential knowledge. It's not the government that does the conservation, it is the community that does the conservation. And so their worldview is that wastewater is a nutrient and not a pollutant. This is domestic water that we are speaking of. I'll also say this, that the city of Kolkata has a combined sewer system. So the sewage that reaches the wetlands is in a diluted form and not a raw sewage. This is a very, very unique piece of ecological engineering or environmental engineering that has happened, as a result of which the sewage reaches the wetlands in a let's say partially treated form. Now, this wetland ecosystem is so important fundamentally because it has a high potential for replicability in resource-starved municipalities who have a manageable amount of land and basically municipal wastewater, which it can treat biologically by using the principles employed by this system. Next one, please. This is a very, very important part of our wetlands. So the sewage comes through a network of underground sewers to a number of sewerage and drainage pumping stations. And they come then through the outfall canals and they come to this place. This place is called Bantala. And there is a set of 10 regulator gates which regulate the flow of sewage to the wetlands. And there are a whole lot of canals. There used to be a river here before. There are a whole lot of canals which take the sewage to various wetlands. And they are more than 200 wetlands in number, the bigger sized ones, which are fully functional throughout the year. And this is a view of, these log gates are run by electricity. They used to be run manually for a long time, but these log gates are run by electricity now. And there is a scale over here. And it is good if the level of sewage stays between, say, 8.5 and 9, or 8.5 and 8. Up to that, these levels, there is a building up of pressure. There is only one gate that is open here, and the other log gates are closed. So there is a fishery feeding canal that goes out of this place, and it goes about 8 kilometers downstream, and all the subsidiary wastewater canals connect, and the sewage goes by gravity. So this is the lifeline of the East Calcutta wetlands, and this has to be properly nurtured and continuously monitored. Next one, please. Next slide. Yes. So these are the productivity facts about the wetlands, and the sewage is the lifeline of the ecosystem, and it flows. Sorry, the one
that you have picked up and which comes is that resilience building has to be supported by economic empowerment of women's groups. It is not enough to give a couple of lectures or do some training and say, okay, now go, you are resilient, go out and adapt. You need the support for that. So thank you very much. Jayati, shall we go on to the next presenter?
Yes, Kusum. So our next presenter is from Bangladesh, VETS, Sanjida Yasmin, and she will talk about this vulnerable group of indigenous women and how they have enhanced their resilience against climate change with the support of VETS and other networks. So welcome to you, Sanjida. It's over to you.
Thank you, Jayatidi, and hello everyone. This is Sanjida Yasmin, and as a project manager from Bangladesh Environment and Development Society. So I'd like to stop my video for a better internet connection and to give the presentation. So please excuse me on this section. And can I share my screen?
Yes, please.
So is it visible to everyone?
No. Yeah, it's visible now. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you again for giving me the floor. And I will share the climate resilient women of Sundarbans coastal region in Bangladesh. And
Sanjita, you're not audible.
sorry, it's the network issues. Okay, okay. Yeah. Is it audible now?
Yeah, so you have 5 minutes.
Yeah, so
yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So before going to the story, I would like to share the background context. And we all know that Sundarbans, which is the single largest mangrove forest and in Bangladesh as well as in the world, and it is also the UNESCO declared World Heritage Site as well. It is also a Ramsar wetland sites, and around 3.5 million coastal people, including the women, depends on this forest for their livelihoods. And due to the global climate change and as well as for the global climate issues, the biodiversity and the ecosystem of this unique forest has been in a declining rate, and the coastal regions associated with these forests are become more susceptible to the natural disaster. And the adverse effect of this global climate change and tremendous natural disaster has a more effect on coastal women. You know, the salinity intrusion, sea level rise in tropical cyclone has a adverse effect in this region, and salinity intrusion become the safe drinking water crisis more severe in the coastal regions, and women are the leading position who are actually available for collecting the water for safe drinking safe drinking water collection. And they have to walk almost 3 to 4 kilometers away for getting the safe drinking water. And another thing is the climate vulnerable coastal women lead a very poor life, and for the feeding of her family she need to use cook, and for the use for cooking she use the mangrove seeds and mangrove twigs and leaves, fallen leaves for cooking fuel. And these the mangrove seeds using for cooking fuel is also another devastating result that it has hampering the natural regeneration process of the Sundarban wetlands. And moreover, the most coastal women depends on the forest resources for their livelihoods, and these forest resource collection activities is not so much women friendly. There is a lots of social discrimination problem, health issues, because they have to stay a lot of time in the saline water. So 91.7% women are seeking for alternative livelihood opportunities. So for solving these complex social and environmental problems, Bangladesh Environment and Development Society is a leading community-based non-government, non-profit environment and development-focused organization, is working since 2010. And our grassroots initiatives are focused on rural reconstruction, mangrove restoration, and mitigating the harmful impact of human-induced climate change, addressing the unsustainable use of the natural resources, and as well as our initiatives are also solving the crisis of electricity by solar energy, drinking water, and reducing the poverty, as well as the issues of gender inequity and human rights. So if we go for our first story, that is the safe drinking water for the coastal women. coastal women, I have already discussed that the safe drinking water crisis is so much intense in the coastal regions of Bangladesh due to the severe effect of water in the region, and the pond water becomes so much irritated to drink. And you know that this is Mrs. Sadhana. She is a coastal woman and living adjacent to the Sundarbans. The village name is Dakop, and rainy season she used to drink the rainwater, but when it is a dry season, the scarcity of rainwater has happened, as well as the pond water is become so saline that she cannot use it for her drinking purposes. And keeping these children alone in the house, and sometimes, you know, the collection of water collection time, she had to harassed by the unknown person, because it's a very great long way from her house. So waterborne diseases frequently attacked to her family because they are using the pond water for drinking purposes. So Bates has introduced the solar-based ponds and filter system for the safe drinking water of this community, but the water quality was not up to the mark. Then our reverse osmosis system was associated with it, and the entire system was run by the solar system for sustainability of the system. So now she's collecting the water from the beds safe drinking water service with a minimum token of money, and these initiatives of safe drinking water saves her time, so she can contribute the time to her family, to her children, as well as she can also contribute the time for any economic activities for her family. And another intervention is sorry, it was maybe okay. So another intervention is the central mangrove sapling nursery as economic benefit for coastal women. She is the woman. Her name is Nomita Mondal, and she is another forest dweller who lives in very near the Sundarbans. And before 2020, she used to collect the seeds from the mangrove forest and use it as a cooking fuel. Along with her, other women are also using the mangrove seeds as a cooking fuel for this intervent and raise awareness against the use of seeds for a cooking fuel, as it's an important natural regeneration process. So she stopped the activities. And why she stopped activities? Because she got a training from vets, that vets supported them and give them training how to establish a mangrove nursery. So her collected seeds have become mangrove saplings, and she sold the saplings to the other organization who are actually doing the regeneration activities in the Sundarban coastal region. So in the year 2020, by selling the mangrove saplings from her mangrove nursery, she already already earned 100,000 BDT, and it's a very much a big achievement for her. And with the association of pets, 5 more women from her region are also have established the mangrove nurseries. So this is another way of adaptation against the climate crisis. And the last story was the mangrove-based product for ensuring the alternative livelihood for the coastal women. And this is the story of Lipika Gain. She is also a village housewife of the Sundarban coastal region. But before entering into alternative livelihood opportunities, she used to be a resource harvester with her husband. But due to the restriction for the government side, as well as the severe natural disaster frequently occurred in this region, it's become a very difficult for her to be a resource harvester in that region. And being a woman, she also faced some social, economic, and health issues. So she stopped going to the forest, and her economic solvency became very lower and lower. So in the meantime, she know about the beds product promotion for alternative livelihood opportunities. So she involved with the beds initiative, got training that how she can develop her product, or how the product as in the previous time, she also used this mangrove-based product like the mangrove pickles, mangrove honey, mangrove molasses, only for her household consumption. But with the help of BETS, now she's capable of doing business. This is another economic solvency.
Excuse
I
me,
have already finished. Just 30
Sanjita.
minutes
Yeah,
will
please.
be enough for
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
So
No, because
she has
you
been
will
capable
have
of giving economic support to her.
you will have an opportunity to again share it with us during the question answer session.
Okay. Okay, so it's a climate. This system is actually a help her to become a climate resilient woman. So in a finished word, I can say that the safe drinking water service, the mangrove-based product, and the mangrove saplings ensure the climate resilient coastal women community of Sundarban. And thank you very much for listening all the things. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank you, Sanjita. Actually, this is interesting because we can see how many Ramsar sites there are in India. There's 49. I can't see where they are.
It's 75 now.
Oh, it's 75.
Yeah,
good.
Last year they made it 75 to mark the 75th anniversary of independence.
Well, and right now, the Director General of the Ramsar Secretariat is a woman. So I wonder whether that with a woman coming into that exalted place, whether there is more interest in women and wetlands. Anyway, this is something that we need to pick up later on. I think our next presentation, when we talk about women and wetlands, try to put it in the larger context of women, communities, water. And I think that the next presentation is not distinctly different. It's very difficult to get large organizations to support communities because these small projects, they don't like it. The transaction costs are too much. Anyway, our next presentation is for women and girls, not only in the wetlands, but building advocacy through climate change resilience from school and community programs in South Asia. And this, I'm happy to say, that it is brings together a networking of women working with the Women for Water Partnership, and also being supported by the Global Water Partnership, where I'm a regional chair. So over to Professor Champa Navaratnas from Sri Lanka and Ms. Meena Das from Nishta, India.
Thank you very much, Kusum, for the opportunity given for us to present here our findings, and Jayati too. Good morning, all UN partners, and good afternoon, our South Asian partners. I am here to present. May I share my presentation?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, as Kusum mentioned, this is about, okay. Yeah, this is about climate change, wetland and women, actions towards creating resilient communities and ecosystems. So for this conference, Water Summit. And here we are going to talk about wetlands advocacy for building climate resilience through school and community programs in South Asia. Here I am Champa Navaratna, and Meena Das also there from Nishta, West Bengal. Now here Netwater is mentioning. I am working for Netwater Sri Lanka. But again, Netwater is working on behalf of Sri Lanka Water Partnership, Sri Lanka. So I'll explain you what we have done. Here, we together, actually, Nishta and Netwater, and together with Sri Lanka Water Partnership, we, in 2021, Women, Water and Climate Tackling the Challenges Conference conducted by Women for Water Partnership. We took part there, and that is supported by Swedish Environmental Institute. Then in 2022, both organizations were recipient of Global Water Partnership Gender Follow-up Grant activity for South Asia. Then with that grants, actually Netwater and partners together with Sri Lanka Water Partnership carried out capacity building for University of Wellassa students as climate catalyst through citizen science program. And NISTA and partners carried out training young women affected by cyclone Amphan as climate catalysts. These are some pictures of NISTA activities, and these are the pictures of Netwater activities. During these two programs, the challenges we have faced are global decisions are not fully implemented at local level. South Asian society is relatively conservative, and development sector initiatives are not fully integrated. Lack of financial support for grassroots initiatives, inadequate support from global initiatives for capacity building, and finally, strengthen gender empowerment through collaborative networks in South Asia. If we go to lessons learned during these activities, during conducting these activities, community engagement critical in building resilience in wetlands, especially due to frequent extreme events, and issues related to assessing financing for women's grassroots organization is critical, and special initiative needed for supporting women's groups in Ramsar sites. So the takeaway message by these two activities are actually the biggest problem for South Asian women organization is not getting enough financial support to upscale pilot programs. If we have to build climate resilience in community level, actually we need financial support. That is the takeaway message here. Okay, thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Champa. I hope that the comments made about the Ramsar sites will reach the Ramsar Secretariat, but I know that your co-presenter Meena is also there. Meena, can I ask you to come with your own takeaway message? If you have a takeaway message, Meena, are you here?
Yes, and thank you, Kushum Didi. I want to share one thing, that young women have to be the lifeline if the next generation has to reap sustainable benefits from the wetlands. And for this, they require a strong support to strengthen this movement and leadership led by these little girls.
Thank you very much, Meena. And I really have to mention here the work done by NISTA, especially after Cyclone Amphan. A lot of the women who were affected were young women who had lost their schooling. So NISTA started setting up schooling systems for the young women. And if these young women had not been in school, very often the case is that they would have been trafficked, trafficked into some place like Delhi, or and taken into very different environments and very unsavory professions. So thank you very much for that. And Jayati, can we now go on to the next, please?
Yeah, so our next presenter is Mr. Kanchana Karunaratne from Australia. He'll be presenting his experience regarding that he wants to show that how secure access to water can enable greater community benefits. So he's going to share some experiences from Australia. So welcome to you, Kanchana. Over to you.
Thanks, Jyoti. And hello, everyone. Thanks very much for inviting me to have a few words today. It's been very interesting listening to everyone else speak about the great work that has been happening. I'm coming to you from Perth, Western Australia. I was born and raised in Sri Lanka and migrated here to Australia with my family some time ago, and sort of grew up here, but very much connected to the water sector in Sri Lanka and South Asia, and my profession is the intersection of sort of engineering and economics. So I work very much in Australia, where we help government agencies and organizations value the benefits of water investments and essentially optimizing investment in water, whether they are government organizations or state-owned organizations, and understanding how to value and effectively allocate capital. So it sort of goes back to some of the points that I think Professor Navaratna made about that funding and financing in some of these evaluations is a key thing. At a large scale, we sort of assist governments and state-owned organizations do that. My experience is really from the Australian context and how we're doing this here, some of the experiences and I guess case studies from what's been happening here. It's certainly applicable to anywhere else in the world. And really it is that almost one step back or a few steps back from where we have been discussing so far. So it's sort of prior to implementation and perhaps at the planning and conceptualization stage, where you sort of work out the value in investing in some of these initiatives and the value in keeping certain ecosystems, such as the sort of Kolkata wetlands that we just heard about, the value of keeping those operating and understanding that it is a financial and economic value to actually keep these ecosystems operational. So in the Australian context, a very quick slide here, what I show you is that we're sort of moving away from the hard engineering of, you know, pump stations, pipelines, dams, desalination plants, to really understanding that water has a benefit beyond that of the simple drinking treated water and removing wastewater, that there are many other community benefits ranging from an improved sense of well-being to habitat and wildlife, to a productivity benefit from active and passive recreation, and then all the way through to carbon sequestration. And I think where the very last one there is where we're at now in terms of understanding the Aboriginal, the indigenous and cultural heritage value of water. That's, I would say, where in the Australian context, where the focus is on at the moment. We haven't done that very well up until now, and it's only just starting to really come into the sort of mainstream focus. So I won't repeat any of this really or go into any of the details, because I'm sure all of you have seen and heard the benefits of that before. But really, the key message here is to say that we have a requirement now from all of these investment evaluation forums to not just value the financial costs of pipes and pumps and concrete, it's to really place a value and monetize all of these other benefits that occur. And that is a core sort of ask that is being made of the people who are investing in these areas. Couple of the examples of where that's happening again in Australia, the two sort of largest population centres are in Victoria and New South Wales, Melbourne and Sydney. There's already a lot of work that's been done on working out how to actually allocate a monetary value to these things. So what we see here is that to keep these systems operating, or to enable investment in these areas, monetizing and attempting to at least monetize those benefits and put them up against the core financial costs is a really good driver, because it allows people to see, here is how much benefit there is, and here is how much benefit we stand to lose if we do not invest in these areas. So again, I say these things in the Australian context, but again, I think that motivation or that driver would apply anyway. So to that end, in Melbourne, there's a large-scale data set that's been set up now that investors and evaluation teams use to sort of value everything from the value of planting more trees to the value of wetlands, the value of having passive and active recreation available to you, and things like, for example, say, reducing urban heat island effect and all those sorts of things that I'm sure you've heard of. As far as possible, there's techniques and mechanisms available to ascribe a value to those things, and that's the same in both Melbourne and in Sydney. The other cities are following suit. Again, I use these two as examples because they're the most dense populated areas in Australia. A very quick example of what I'm speaking about in Western Sydney. So that's sort of I guess, a lower socioeconomic area traditionally compared to the sort of established area of the main Sydney area. And here you can see very quickly the options looked at what's called a drain city, which is the sort of traditional get drinking water in, get wastewater out, all the way to what's called a water resilient city. So which basically we're looking at keeping water in the local area, maximizing water blue, or what's called the blue spaces and the green spaces, and actually trying to recycle and reuse. So for example, I think Ruba, you mentioned using treated wastewater for agricultural purposes and sort of reusing that water. That's very much a theme that's happening here, to try and make sure that you recycle and reuse for agricultural and non-potable residential benefits. And just at a very high level, you can see that comparatively, you know, this is very, very large scale. So you can see, you know, 250,000 dwellings in Australia, and over an analysis period of about 35 years, the total benefits in the order of, you know, $10 billion. So that's not insignificant. If you think about the total cost, it's about 30. So about a third of that value is in these other benefits, which is a really interesting thing to see. So these things then have a place in the forums that are at the decision-making level, at the ministerial level, where you can actually point at a number. Certainly it's still at a planning level, but it allows that conversation to move forward. It allows all of those things to stay on the decision makers table. And that's where we're sort of focusing on at the moment. Just a very last slide, I think, to finish off. Whilst I think with that core sort of a design and investment, we've sort of moved quite a lot forward. We're still behind, or have a lot of work to do in addressing vulnerability and closing the gap. And this is particularly true for Indigenous communities. So particularly with SDG goal number 6, in Indigenous communities, there's still a long way to go. I think it's fair to say for the first time, we are seeing Indigenous values come into the forum and come into focus, that they are things to be considered. I would say we're at the beginning of understanding how to actually ascribe value. So for example, carbon sequestration, things like that, which used to not be able to be valued, we can now value. Whereas things like Indigenous water, cultural values and so forth, we're still at the starting point, I would say, but it's at least now on the table. And the very last thing I'll finish off is that the other important thing is that the sectors, if you like, has moved away from, as I said, to heavy engineering to a more customer-centric focus, where you sort of ensure that the design is around the people that you serve, where things like vulnerability and ensuring that everyone has an equitable share of the services is maintained and actually developed. So this includes things like ensuring that there's equitable gender diversity, or genders are not unfairly disadvantaged, and also particularly with things like domestic violence, where women and children are adversely affected, that those particularly water providers and utilities have now a very important mandate to ensure particularly those vulnerable segments of the community are taken care of and not forgotten about in the way they design these systems. So thank you very much. I think I'll leave it there, and then we can have a discussion about questions at a later time.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Kanchana. And to the audience, if you think that, Australia has suddenly become part of South Asia, I must tell you, it is not the case. It is just that we take that the issues that they are dealing with and the way they are dealing with has significant lessons learned for South Asia. Also, how we are dealing with our indigenous communities, our groups in the wetlands, as well as other indigenous communities, has significant lessons for Australia at this point in time, which is just coming now to grapple with the needs of their indigenous communities in a very meaningful way. So both ways, it is, I think, a win-win situation. And the other, I would like to sort of identify this network that we have built. As you can see, we have presenters from Perth all the way through South Asia going to USA. So over to you, Jayati, for the next presentation.
Yes, thank you, Kusum. So our next presenter is Professor Ok Chai. from Arizona State University and the Water Policy Group, USA, and he's going to provide a global look at issues, opportunities, and advances in reconciling development and environment with a gender equity lens. Very warm welcome to you, Professor Urchai. Thanks for accepting our invitation to participate in the event.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be a participant in this event. So let me share my screen. Is my screen visible?
No, not yet.
Okay, let me try again. Sorry about that. Is it visible now?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So what I would like to do is to have a rather global look and identify some of the opportunities and issues. The key points to support my presentation is that events, global phenomena such as land degradation, deforestation, biodiversity loss, climate change, these are the global environmental challenges. They affect men and women differently, and usually, and in most cases, they affect women more in a more negative, more adverse way. However, both men and women suffer from poverty. So in addition to the environmental issues, development-related issues have different impacts on men and women, and women have less resources to cope with these. However, women's engagement leads to better environmental outcomes and better development outcomes for all, for men and women alike. And as a result, the need, rationale, and urgency for gender equality have been widely recognized for some time, but the progress is uneven, slow, or stagnant. As a matter of fact, according to a recent UN Women assessment, it will take centuries to attain gender equality at the current speed, at business as usual. And we also know that SDG 5 targets are off track based on the available data. And I'm underlining the word available data because where data is not available, the gap is even worse. So again, going back to sustainable development goals and targets related to gender equality, UN Women assessment tells us that we are way off track based on the data that we have. And again, we have only 48% of the data that we need to monitor SDG 5, which means that for 52% of the data that we don't have, we have a good idea that women are in a less favorable situation. And it's not only SDG 5 that obviously would allow us to see the status of women. Some of the SDG indicators, such as the one for zero hunger, have gender-specific indicators, and this is about food insecurity. And food insecurity, despite good progress in some regions, such as Australia and North America, Europe, we have significant gaps. If we look at the Central Asia and Southeastern Asia, here we see that this is for women, this is for men. For men, food insecurity is down to 33.9%, and it's going down. and for women it's over 44%, and the slope is not as steep as for men. So the betterment of the situation is slower. In some other regions, such as Latin America and the Caribbean, the situation for men is improving, whereas for women, it's getting worse. And overall, if we look at the world averages, with 27.6% of men being food insecure, is less than the same figure for women, which is about 32%. And in addition to that, on a global scale, the women's slope is flat. It's not improving, yet men's situation is improving slightly, not fast enough, but again, we see a disparity here. When we come to the situation in water sector, the situation is worse, we know, but we have no gender-specific indicators for SDG 6. There are efforts led by Women for Water Partnership, other women's groups, and World Water Assessment Program to close this data gap, but we are still at the beginning, unfortunately. Why is this a big deal then? First of all, women are critical environmental decision makers, and they are more productive. According to FAO, when women have the same access to productive resources, they increase the yield by 20 to 30% and increase nutritional value by more than 17%. On the other side of the coin, environmental sustainability can help achieve gender goals. So since it's making sense and since our governments have committed themselves to gender equality, we can expect that at least at the high decision-making levels, this is happening. And just an indication from the ratio of national focal points of governments to global environmental facility, we see only 29% of these focal points are women and men are 71%. Again, with the same token, we would expect to see more women at the level of environmental ministry positions, and this is a portfolio held by women ministers as of 2 years ago. This is pretty recent, and women environment ministers are here, number 3. So there are women tend to become environment ministers more than other portfolios, but when we look at the totals, only 15% of environmental sector ministries are held by women. So 85% is held by men, and that is not very favorable to women. In closing, we need to significantly accelerate SDG 6 achievement, not only SDG 6, SDG 5, but also 6 and other SDGs with gender-specific targets being given more attention. We need to collect more gender disaggregated data, and we need more assessments. We need to mainstream gender and environment nexus and stop looking at these in silos because they are very closely related. Gender equality is everyone's issue, men and women, and it's not a women's issue or a feminist agenda. And we need to support women's voices, their leadership, and their organizations a lot more actively and strongly. And with this, thank you very much for your attention. Back to you, Kusum.
I'm looking at Jayati. I think you had some comments.
I guess Jayati's system is having some problem.
Jayati?
Jayati is not there, Kusum.
No, I'm there.
Oh, you're there.
Kusum,
Okay.
yeah. No, Kusum, you can please carry on.
Yes. I think, Ochai, this is really good because we you have underlined, for instance, all the gaps. You know, there's a big problem in getting data, and gender and big data keeps on falling into this black hole. The issue is that, again, it is a matter of funding. All the time, you know, from day one, from 1985 onwards, we have been talking about the problem of funding. Even now, with the SDGs more or less staring us in the face, the deadlines are there, climate change is affecting all of us, we are still looking at the funding issue. And to digress a little bit from the water sector, I keep on asking people, why is it that, you know, we having billionaires who spend, you know, $18 million in going to space, but cannot invest in helping us to achieve the SDGs? So anyway, that is one of my little trailers. But then I am sorry to inform you, you know, Christian Mossink from the Gender and from the Global Water Alliance in Philadelphia has been a strong supporter, but he has been quite unwell. So he had to leave quite early. So unfortunately, I would want to quickly give the way forward that he was going to talk on. He talks about collaboration at community level with like-minded entities and NGOs, which can contribute to wetland restoration. And this is also an issue that was taken up by quite a lot of people. And we had some success stories where this is happening. The agenda of wetland champions working on environmental justice, linking up with people who are water educators from the institutions and the agencies, I think is important for us. Too much of our water sector works in silos, and that is a problem which we need to overcome. The second is linking up with what you have been just saying, Ochai, building, expanding, and managing the databases for wetlands and wetland management, because maybe our communities can become a little less digitally deprived, and that is something that we can take forward. If we have countries which, like, you know, Sri Lanka, everybody has 2 phones probably in hand. The third one is that, you know, he mentions the art of creating wetlands, building into the landscaping of built environments. And one of the little things which stick in my mind in traveling in Japan is that in the middle of the entire city, you would have a paddy field, a rice field. So I think that this is something we need to try and review the way that we do urban spaces. Because right now what happens is that all the urban spaces which are being built by filling in the wetlands, in the end create problems for urban people because we have massive floods. So thank you very much. I'm just trying to recap what he had wanted to say, probably not too well. But Jayati, where do we go from here?
Kusum, I think we can have some questions, and Shomuna she is helping us in noting down these questions which are there in the chat box. So Shomuna, could you please pick a few questions, because we have this time restriction, and let's see if we can answer like some 3-4 questions.
Yeah, hello. Am I audible?
Yes.
Hello, everyone. So the questions in the chat box are for Mr. Manish Ranjankar. It is, what are the major challenges that you have faced during the course of the project, and what is done for the Besharam eradication?
Okay,
So
shall I answer it now?
Yes, sir.
The major problem, first of all, was the male dominance in all these fishing sector in area. and we have to struggle a lot for 4 to 5 years to get the entry point for women in all this work. But as you have seen in the photographs, the work which we have done with women groups have opened the path for women to enter in this sector. And last year, they have independently leased 2 tanks and done all the fishing activities there on their own. So slowly the gap is opening, and let's hope that it will open widely in the coming future. And for eradication of hypomia, it is eradicated manually, where the soil is soft. It just they just pull it by hand. But if the soil is hard, they cut it and pile it, and later on burn it before the rains. So
Thank you,
it
sir.
is not very much burning these plants is not very much environmentally sound practice, but we are trying to uh, get the help of some institutions who are who will help us to convert it into organic manure.
Thank you, sir. Two more questions are there for you. Is that
Shomana, I think
Yes.
you can because we have this limitation of time. So maybe 2 more questions, and then we will be sharing email IDs of all our speakers. So then people can continue. They can get in touch with them for further details. So you can. So if you have any other questions for other speakers, you can share those questions.
Yes, ma'am. So, there's a question for Ms. Sanjida Shefa is which are the mangrove-based products?
Thank you. So I have already mentioned it in the presentation that the mangrove-based products are the mangrove pickle, which is the fruits of Sonaracea apitella pickles, and honey, and mangrove molasses, which is made of nipa palm molasses. That those are the mangrove-based products, as well as some leaf walnuts and some handicraft items that are also made from the mangrove related products. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Shona, do you have any other questions for other presenters?
No, ma'am, not as of now.
Okay. So maybe anyone from the audience would like to ask any question. We can take 1 or 2 questions. Okay, Kusum, so I think there are no...
Yeah, I think that we have now come to the end of this session, but
Yeah.
we have not come to the end of the road. When we set up this, the network with the string of pearls which goes from Perth to Philadelphia, we have in mind certain forward steps. We need to take this voice forward in global arenas such as the Stockholm Water Symposium, and for South Asia, which is very important, next year's Bali Water Forum in Indonesia. So I think that we have positives and negatives coming. We have some strong lessons learned which need to be, I think, highlighted in other arenas. But we also have a message about the need for women's empowerment, economic resilience coming together with the environmental resilience. Thank you very much for joining. I'm on behalf of all the partners who are coming into these sessions, Global Water Partnership, Women for Water Partnership, Saki Waters, Marston Jacobs, Philadelphia GWA. Thank you very much for coming. Please stay in touch and keep the group going. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kusum. And on behalf of all the organizers, I would also like to extend my gratitude to all the participants, including audience, for taking out time from their busy schedule to grace this event. And my special thanks to Bram and Judith for their technical support. And yes, as you said, that we should all be stay in touch, and this should not be the end, but should be the beginning of our journey together. Thank you.